My name is Nico Steves. Podcasts this summer season will run 15 minutes each in a re-release of my book, The Constant Procession, the history of the Virgin Mary since she passed on. I'd like to thank you for your listening to these weekly Constant Procession podcasts, and also for purchasing plus spreading the word about my book, The Very Fine Light, which is available on Amazon.com. This summer I'll also be traveling to complete my next book, and I will be bringing you a few reports from the field about this upcoming book. And so, please keep checking my website, nicosteves.com, as I will be posting blog updates from time to time. By the way, keep me posted on what you're up to in the comments section of my website or via email at nicosteves@gmail.com. And now, enjoy this installment of The Constant Procession. Installment 8. The shepherdess could not imagine that she could be in the presence of the Mother of God. Thinking her to be a mere mortal, Benoit asked, "Lovely lady, what are you doing here? Did you come to buy some plaster?" Then, without waiting for her to answer, blurted out, "Would you be so kind as to give us this child? He would delight us all." The Madonna smiled without giving an answer. Charmed and won over, Benoit admired the beautiful lady. At mealtime, she took a piece of bread and said, "Would you like to eat with me? I've got some good bread. We can dip it in the spring." When late afternoon came, the Madonna took the little child and went back into the rock grotto and disappeared. The apparitions occurred for over the next 4 months. During that time, the girl's expressions changed, and she would share her joy with everyone she knew. Seeing the change in her, they began to wonder, could it actually be the Madonna she saw? Yet the girl would never ask the Madonna her name. After several months, without saying a word, the Madonna began to speak to her in order to teach. Putting herself on the same wavelength as the unschooled girl, the Madonna offered a relaxed relationship with the young girl. One day, the Madonna invited Benoit to rest by her side. And though Benoit was quite immature, the Madonna, with great patience, brought Benoit along. Gradually, she set Benoit off to the work she would eventually do for the rest of her life. Benoit earned a reputation for being able to tell someone's problems and provide insights that would stun them. Benoit's gift was the heavy task of getting people to bare their souls, not so much to her, but to themselves. She would disclose their sad condition to them. When needed, she would remind them of their forgotten or hidden sins and urge them to clean themselves of the sins. One conversion, that of Benoit's boss, a woman who possessed no interest in religion at all, but wanted to uncover the truth about the rumored apparitions. One day before sunrise, she snuck into the grotto before Benoit got there. Benoit arrived, and a few minutes later she saw the Madonna. "Your mistress is over there, hidden behind the rock," said the Madonna. "Tell her not to curse with the name of Jesus, because if she keeps it up, there will be no paradise for her. Her conscience is in a very bad state. She should do penance." The employer came out from her hiding place quite shaken, and promised to mend her ways from that moment on. For the rest of her life, Benoit helped spread the love of God for the people through the intercessions of his mother. Even today, the pilgrims still come, seeking inspiration and reconciliation at this apparition site. Chapter 15. Her procession builds. Benoit died in 1718. At the same time, the Greek island of Tinos falls to the Ottomans. It is a conquest that comes very late for the Ottomans' rule. Their fortunes for continued march on Europe has been shifting as the Austrian Habsburg dynasty began winning some battles over the Ottomans. In one region, after successfully defeating the Ottomans, the Habsburgs established a new country, the Kingdom of Serbia, also in 1718. However, it was short-lived as the Ottomans soon recaptured the area. This turnabout caused what became known as the First Great Migration of Christian Serbs from their native land of Serbia. Their unsuccessful defense against the powerful Ottomans forced this Christian community to migrate into the safety of Habsburg lands. Another hotspot at this point in time existed in a distressed France. Steeped in the excesses and arrogance of men in power, the extravagance of the nobility, and even misguided church hierarchies had increased the burden of the French people. The people's outrage against the nobility grew and grew. This anger evolved into the beginnings of the French Revolution, starting with major revolts in 1740 that toppled both the nobility and religious powers of France. But the anger did not dissipate, and the bloodshed as well as lawlessness increased. But the efforts of the people's new laws increased in brutality. 50 years into this social upheaval saw more violence that developed into almost total anarchy during the years 1793 and 1794, where the guillotine, also known as the national razor, brought even more bloodshed and hatred. The ultimate victim of these atrocities became the French people themselves. The once virtuous act of rebellion and all that the people had sacrificed to gain their rights found with each new act of rebellion an even greater loss of rights. They renounced religion and focused on the established Roman Catholic Church in particular. Religious worship and teachings became illegal. The new leaders of the revolution forced priests to become government employees. They allowed the destruction of Christian churches, often with it, killings of priests and nuns in the process. The revolutionary government founded its own new version of a religion of sorts, with a new calendar that stripped away Sunday and called 1793 the new Year One. As this part of the French Revolution winds down around 1802, but by now a fervor for war became the unfortunate byproduct. Now, this army of revolutionaries recognizes itself to be the new military powerhouse on the European continent. Revolutions and this new French army move onto numerous continental fronts. In one Frenchman's case, it provided invaluable military experience for a young Napoleon, who became a hero and new military leader. Once again, this became a bitter irony for those who had worked so hard to free the French people of repressive governments, since it helped to found Napoleon's reign as emperor of his New France. The nationalist fever in France continued to spread from its borders. By 1821, the unrest across Europe had a profound effect in the once independent country of Greece. The Greek people had been living under Ottoman rule for over 400 years. But the extension of this French secular revolution took a different turn in Greece. While being under Islamic rule, they had great difficulty continuing to practice their Christian religious beliefs. Penalties and loss of privilege existed for Christians should they worship Christianity under Islamic Ottoman rule. The native Greeks longed for both religious as well as political freedom. With the movements of change in Europe, the Greek Orthodox Christians determined to fight to regain their homeland. Revolt turned into war for religious freedom and political independence. 2 years later, in 1823, on this tiny island of Tinos, at Our Lady of the Angels Monastery, a sister named Panagia has a dream that occurs continually. In her dreams, she sees the Madonna, who tells her to dig up an icon that lies buried on the island. A miraculous recovery surprises the villagers as they dig at the spot. They uncover an icon of the Madonna, determined to have been buried there for over 850 years. The icon's retrieval of the Madonna encouraged the Christians that they would succeed in taking back their homeland. As with Marian apparition sites, things on the island of Tinos changed forever after the revelation and discovery of the icon of the Madonna. Greece won independence, and the island of Tinos emerged as one of Greece's most important religious centers in the first part of the 19th century. In 1960, the Greek government declared the island a holy site. Today, the island is the center of national observances on the Feast of the Annunciation, where Mary accepted the request of God to birth his son, and the Dormition or Assumption, when Mary's life ends and she passes on, her body being raised to heaven, which is also celebrated as Greek Independence Day. And still today, pilgrims come to seek a blessing from the miraculous icon of the Madonna. Visitors find themselves in awe by the sight of the Church of the Panagia Evangelistria, which translated means Our Lady of Good Tidings. Visitors are also startled by the frequent sight of people as they crawl up the stone-paved lane to the church at the top of the hill, many holding Orthodox komboskinis or prayer ropes as they climb in silence towards the Panagia, or the Madonna, with prayers and also pledges of great thanksgiving. This church, built over the site where the icon was found, has stone steps worn thin under the feet of hundreds of thousands of pilgrims who have come ever since in an endless procession. Chapter 16. The Madonna comes to Paris. In the year 1830, the Madonna comes to Paris. In a departure from her appearances in remote areas, she comes to the big city. The Madonna apparates before Catherine Leborgne, a nursing nun of the St. Vincent de Paul mission in Paris. There is some confusion about this extraterrestrial encounter because it is known by two names. Some reference it by the street where this apparition took place, Rue de Bac, and also it is known to others as Our Lady of the Miraculous Medals. The complexity in the struggle for leadership in France at this time is confusing, but like many countries, France's foreign policy practices differed from their homeland policies. When Napoleon's continental war efforts end in defeat, the victors from other countries forced the French to reinstate a monarchy as their next form of government. And so a new king, King Louis XVIII, is crowned. He reigns until his death 10 years later, followed in 1824 by his brother Charles X. King Charles chooses to load his government with men from the nobility in an effort to solidify the nobility's return to power. He and his advisors decide to impose a series of rigid laws. One law tried to rein in secularism that came along with the revolution. The misguided use of power on the part of the new crown made it a crime punishable by death for anyone profaning the communion host of the Roman Catholic Church. The church leadership well remembered the mistreatment they had received under the previous revolutionary movement, did little to protest this unreasonable act of intolerance. The extreme punishment and unfairness of the unpopular law helped light the fuse for still another round of bloodshed and revolt by the angry citizens in France in the summer of 1830. But the Madonna came first. In a nunnery, on the night of July 18 of that year, Sister Catherine Leborgne revealed what happened to her. Quote, "Suddenly, awakened by an angel, I was told to go to the chapel and pray. The Madonna appeared to Catherine for 2 hours in the chapel. The Madonna spoke to her with a message to remind men of the healing word of Christ and his guidance of grace and forgiveness. It's difficult to imagine the hostility and anger outside her chapel on Rue de Bac. The king had left town. The chief of police fooled himself into the belief that he could control the mobs. The people, angry over being governed once again by a king, determined once again to take control of their country. 9 days later, Paris once again became embroiled in violent protests during July 27, 28, and 29 in what became known as the Glorious 3 Days. And so once again, this time in the year 1830, did a revolt destroy absolute monarchy in France. With over 1,000 people dead, this time the revolt led to the formation of a constitutional monarchy where the king became responsible to the people rather than the other way around. Catherine had also been told that she would be given a mission and not to let anyone stand in her way in fulfillment of this mission. She had a visitation once again in November 1830 and saw a vision that she understood must be copied and made into spiritual medals intended for all people to help to strengthen and encourage those who believed in Jesus Christ. Catherine reported that when the Blessed Mother returned during evening meditation, she displayed herself inside an oval frame, standing upon a globe, wearing many rings of different colors, most of which shone rays of light over the globe. Around the margin of the frame appeared the words, "O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse in thee." As Catherine watched, the frame seemed to rotate, showing a circle of 12 stars, a large letter M surmounted by a cross, and the stylized Sacred Heart of Jesus and Immaculate Heart of Mary underneath. Asked why some of her rings did not shed light, it is reported the Madonna replied, "Those are the graces for which people forget to ask." Catherine then heard the Madonna ask her to take these images to her father confessor, telling him that they should be put on medallions. This is Nico Steves. I hope you enjoyed this installment. My book, The Very Fine Light, can be found using the title, The Very Fine Light, on Amazon.com. Please feel free to contact me at nicosteves.com. That's Nikos Steves, Steves.com. If you like this episode, and for more, share them with friends. This is Nico Steves. Thank you. See you next time.